Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 119 of the show. And before we get started, we're going to do a bit of house cleaning real quick because, well, we always do the house cleaning, so we're going to do it. I do want to thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me. Thank you guys for the love and support for Wednesday's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And today we're going to continue on to this train of talking about the next generation, except this time we're going to be focusing on one of the games, but we'll get to it. I do want to thank my Patreon backers for coming back and listening to the show and also continuing to support me on Patreon. If you guys want to become Patreon backers, you can just click the link in the description down below and you can become a Patreon backer for $2 a month. You don't have to do it. It's just if you want to. It's just an easy way to support me. And for those of you that like listening to the show, you get early access to the episodes before everyone else. And in time, we are going to be working on some things for the Patreon, so the Patreon backers can get more incentive to become backers or continue to be backers. But I hope you guys continue to be patient with me because, like I said, with everything going on, it's been a little bit tricky to figure that stuff out. So in time we are, but I do have some ideas of things that I want to do. So just be patient with me in regards to that. I do want to also say thank you guys for coming back and listening. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, or if you're watching the YouTube version on YouTube, I really appreciate it because it really means a lot to me that you guys enjoy listening, watching the show, interacting, and letting me know how you guys feel about the topics. Like you guys that follow me on social medias, on all my social medias, primarily on Instagram because that's where I like to post the polls. That's where you guys get to vote what the topics are. And it's actually really nice because it makes it easy for me to decide how I want to do this, But I do want to thank you guys for coming back. It really, really means a lot to me. But let's go into today's episode. So, as I mentioned in Wednesday's episode, if I'm going to post a link up here so you guys can go watch it. Wednesday's episode, we talked about a game in particular that's coming out with the next generation of consoles. It primarily will launch, it's specifically for the next Xbox, and it's Halo Infinite. I mentioned when we talked about the Xbox event that Halo Infinite, I was happy with what I saw, but I also understand that there's a lot of reasons why people are upset. But I will also say that a lot of the reasoning behind people hating the game isn't so justified. And it makes me sad because it's not justified to hate this game as much as people do. I'd say it's not unwarranted because it makes sense why they're upset, but I think there's a limit to how upset you can be when you borderline either false information or just blind hatred. Why do I say that? When Halo Infinite was shown off, when they started the event, because I knew they were going to start with it. When I talked to Gilberto when we were watching the event, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if they start with Halo because it is the most anticipated game. And they did. And what we saw with the initial trailer when they were forging Master Chief's armor, the little trailer that they made, it looked amazing. The trailer looked great. And then they jumped into the demo, and a lot of people have said unanimously that they kind of got duped a little bit because they felt like they were going to actually start playing it because a lot of people were anticipating playing this game. And it was interesting when we saw it. The trailer, I get it, yes. When you watched it on the stream, it was a bit problematic because the stream, obviously when you're streaming something, quality can dip. At the same time, there's going to be some unnecessary jitters due to internet connection. And there was a lot of rumors going around in what happened in regards to this showcase. But the main thing that got everyone a little bit ticked off was how it looked. And it was interesting because at first I was like, okay, I thought this looked great. I thought there was a lot of instances where it looked good to me. The gameplay looked very, very solid. It was a good step in the right direction, that it wasn't as egregious as it was in Halo 5, even though I do understand why people say Halo 5 in terms of multiplayer was the most enjoyable experience, because it was very tight gameplay. It was very fun. It was very fast. It was great. It felt tight. And with this one, you definitely can see there was a return to form, that it was primarily focused on tight gameplay. It wasn't so loose like it was in Halo 4, because anybody that knows Halo 4's multiplayer was very loose. It felt like you were just on ice the entire time. It was very slippery. It didn't feel good. And it was nice that they were able to tighten that up in Halo 5, and they made it really enjoyable. But I also understand how a lot of Halo purists don't really enjoy that style of gameplay because they don't like sprinting. And I will say this, it is nice based on what we saw, because I did see people like Hyper Xperia's, the Actman. I saw their videos in regards to this topic as well. Hyper Xperia is actually very happy because, yes, he is upset that sprinting is still in the game, because a lot of Halo purists, or a lot of people that enjoy the Halo games, felt that sprinting shouldn't exist in Halo because it ruins the flow of gameplay. It ruins map design, because Halo did not need sprinting in the game. That's what made it unique. And while I agree, I also think it makes a little bit more sense when you're dealing with an open world game, because this is a game that the developers have said in terms of sandbox, and I'm actually reading like the notes on what it's saying, that it says that the sandbox is as big as Halo 4 and Halo 5 combined. So it's a very large map. It's definitely the biggest Halo I've made so far. It has a very massive budget that they spent on, like almost $500 million on this game. Well, yeah, I think it was like $500 million that they spent on this damn game. And it had a big budget. And they've definitely been working on this game for multiple years. But it is meant for the next generation. However, yes, the art style has definitely led to the illusion of poor graphics. There's not enough graphic fidelity. And there's been many rumors coming out saying that the game was actually run on a similar spec PC dev kit, that this wasn't the actual like final product Xbox. There was rumors going around that this was a very early build of the game that was made in January of this year, the start of January. Because if you think about it, E3 was meant for June. And these events are usually planned well ahead of time. They're planned extremely ahead of time. And it made sense that they were using a January build. It made sense. There's no like reasoning saying that it doesn't make sense that they would. However, it's also funny because when you watch the one that they posted on YouTube, it's a much newer build and it looks much cleaner. There's definitely better lighting. There's better graphic fidelity. And a lot of people were upset because they thought that the graphic fidelity wasn't up to par with what it should be for a next generation game, especially when you're advertising this as your flagship game to start the generation. But I will also say this, it was very good. It was running at 4K 60 with no issue. There was no stutterings, there was no lag. And I thought that was really nice. The fact that it was running at 4K 60 with no issue. That was actually really impressive that they pulled it off. And yes, the graphic fidelity, in my opinion, it can be worked on because, prime example, like Gears of War 4, before it came out, there was a multiplayer beta. It didn't look as good. It looked like a 360 game. What happened when it finally came out? After a few months, when it came out, it looked great. What happened with Halo 5? The beta didn't look so hot. The final game looked extremely realistic. It looked great. But you also have to keep in mind of the art style. This is something that we have to keep in mind because Halo 5 went for a very realistic art style and a lot of people didn't like it. So they went back to the original cartoon design that a lot of people were happy with. And that's why, even though, yes, it doesn't seem so rich in terms of graphics, because it's not meant to be hyper realistic because they complained about it. And now they gave you a more cartoonish art style, but it still looks great. It runs great. But I do understand that people are upset about this. And they have all the rights to be upset because this is a next generation game. And this is what leads to a lot of people feeling that this generation of consoles is kind of dead on arrival for some reason. And they felt this way because they felt Microsoft, in the process of being very pro-consumer, they may have overextended themselves by supporting the older Xbox One, the base black Xbox One, the VCR player. And this makes people very upset, because the reality is that this console is not so powerful. The original base Xbox One was terrible. It was trash. The Xbox One S was actually a little bit more powerful, but it was also smaller and it was using newer technologies that, was better overall. But the fact that Halo Infinite will be able to be played on those older consoles does mean they had to dumb it down a little bit. But granted, I don't feel it's exactly the same. I don't really feel that way. The reason I don't feel that way is mainly because this game, yes, it was designed for the Xbox One, but the better version of it will be played on the Xbox Series X, because Microsoft has even come out and said it. We will not have a fully fledged game that will handle the Xbox Series X hardware to its absolute peak limit until at least a year or two after. Like, that makes sense. That falls in line with the Obsidian RPG Avowed coming out. That falls in line with probably Fabled coming out. That falls in line with, Hellblade 2. This falls in line with a lot of those more intensive games that are going to look graphically amazing, that we know they'll be good. And that doesn't even include Gears of War 6. This doesn't include the next Forza, actual Forza 5. This doesn't include those games. It doesn't. And we know those games are going to be very graphically heavy. There's going to be an insane amount of graphic fidelity. There's going to be great performance. And we know that that's when they'll push this game to their limits. Well, they'll actually push the Xbox to its limits. But I do understand why a lot of people are mad that Halo, the flagship of Xbox, the flagship brand or game for Xbox that everybody knows, isn't getting that same treatment. And it makes sense, because there was an interview coming out saying that Halo Infinite, Microsoft's plan with it is to make a 10-year game, that the game will last for 10 years, that they would support it, because they see this as a launching pad for the future of Halo, as a way to push to a new direction. That's why we won't see another Halo for a while after Halo Infinite. And granted, this is their plan. Plans can change, but it makes sense why they wanted to do this. Because over time it will get better. They'll add story expansions, or maybe they'll, expand the multiplayer, keep doing more of it. So think of it in the sense of what Rainbow Six Siege is doing, or what Destiny is doing, where they don't plan on making a sequel anytime soon, but they just keep supporting the game and keep adding new content to it. And it makes sense with Halo Infinite. Granted, yes. Do I think Halo Infinite will still be a great game? Yes. Based on what I saw, the interactions with the characters, with Master Chief and the pilot, and what we saw with the actual Banished being in terms of gameplay, it looked great. And I'm excited to see more about the multiplayer. I want to see the flight testing for the multiplayer. But I do also understand that they view this as a culmination of every Halo. That they view this as a culmination or a love letter to the original Halos, going back to basics, but at the same time also introducing a lot of the new mechanics and a lot of the new things that have been added to Halo. And this is a great way. The fact that they bring back the armor abilities. They're not the armor abilities that were in Halo Reach, but the ones in Halo 3. And people were happy about that. The fact that the grappling hook is not as overly spammable as we thought it would be, because a lot of people thought this was going to be like Just Cause, or they thought it was going to be like, what's another game that uses a grappling hook? Like Batman. They thought it was going to be like overly oppressive. Like they thought this was just going to be very stupid. And they actually came out, 343 actually came out and said in multiplayer, it's actually going to be an item that you have to fight for, because that's what it is. It's an armor ability. It's just like in Halo 3 where you pick up the Regenerator or the Flare or the Disruptor, where you pick those things up and you have to fight to see who gets it. And I like that. I think that's a great idea. There's a lot of good things going on with this game that a lot of people seem to just be overlooking because of the blind hate of the graphics. And yes, it makes sense. We're not trying to defend the graphics. And I do believe that it wasn't a bright idea to show this version of the game. I do not think it was a bright idea to show the same demo that they had when they had a newer demo or a newer build of the game ready to go because they posted it on YouTube. I did not think it was a bright idea. Do I think the game, they can finish a lot of the bugs in terms of graphics and everything like that? Yes. I honestly believe they can. They've done it before. We've already seen it because it's possible. It's just tweaking it. I think the game is finished. I think it is true that the game's finished. And I also understand that with the whole circumstances of the world right now, it's not so easy to do these kind of tweaks because, yeah, studios are stretched out right now. They're not able to interact in the same way that they were, like able to coordinate, because this is a very big team. It's a very big studio. And it makes sense that it's not so easy. Like, we have to be honest. Like, the pandemic has ruined a lot of things. It's made things a lot more trickier. It's definitely like pushed some games back. It's helped, it has made developing games a lot more challenging, and it takes a lot of working around to figure this out. I'm not justifying 343 pushing this demo out, what they showed us. I think they should have just showed the newer one because they had a newer build ready to go. They just stuck with it mainly because, like, they're probably like, hey, we don't have time to swap the builds. Like, this is what we have, but we do have another build. And the newer build is probably farther ahead. Like, Colt Eastwood recently did a video where he did some color correcting, where he did a good amount of editing for the HDR content that was showed on the video, like to fix the dynamic range, fix a lot of the contrast. And with some simple tweaks, it looks amazing. It's not something difficult. Granted, yes, they're still polishing a lot of things. I'm not going to lie that there's still some polishing that needs to be done. There's some things that did look a little bit choppy. We're not going to lie. But the game is running at 4K 60. And this also leads to a lot of people feeling that this game or the next generation of consoles in general is very underpowered. This is why a lot of PC elitists are like, well, just buy the game on PC and I'll play a better version of it. Well, okay. Like, these consoles are still going to perform incredibly well. They're well optimized. Do I believe that Halo Infinite was designed with the Series X in mind? No. I do believe that it was a game that was being designed for the Xbox One X or the Xbox One in general, and the Series X is just going to be the better version, the upscaled version with more performance. I do think this game is going to run great on the Xbox One X, but we'll see. However, there's definitely a lot of good things going on that a lot of people seem to be ignoring because of the blind hate for this game. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves that we're not trying to defend 343 for what we saw, but we should also compliment them and praise them for what they have shown, that there is a lot of good there. There's a lot of digestible things that are very pleasant. There's a lot of great things that they're doing, with how they're dealing with sprint, that it's not as egregious as it was before, where it's not like Halo Reach, where it's super fast, or get out of jail free card, or Halo 5, where it's just incredibly absurd. It's very manageable, and it makes sense in the campaign to have a sprinting mechanic. It makes sense because you're traversing a very open world. It's a very big environment. Like, you have to have something besides vehicles. It makes sense. And in multiplayer, it might be disabled. And even then, the sprinting isn't so bad. It's not fast. Like, people have noticed that it seems like it's actually slower than what it was in Halo 5. And a lot of people, even though, yes, they're still unhappy that it's in the game, but they can work around it because they're like, okay, it's not as egregious. Same thing with a grappling hook. The fact that it's an armor ability and that it's not like guaranteed with everybody, that you have to fight for it if you want it. And there's a lot of good going on that a lot of people seem to be ignoring because they're just so focused on blindly hating the game because of how it looks, even though that could easily be fixed in less than a couple months. Because keep in mind, this game will launch with the Xbox, so it could launch in November or December. There's rumors that it will launch in November. We also have another event for Xbox coming up soon where they're going to show Project Lockhart, and they might reveal the flight testing for this game, and we actually get to see how it actually performs. But I will say that this is very interesting. I'm excited for this game. It didn't die down how I felt about it. Like, I still felt happy about what I saw. Granted, yes, visually, there's room to improve. 100%. There is extremely room to improve. I'm not going to lie to you guys, and I'm not going to condone it. I'm going to agree with y'all that yes, I do not believe they should have went with the build that they went with. I think they should have just went with the newer build that they clearly had ready. I don't know why they did it, but I also understand why they could have went with it, because if things were already set in place to have this exact same build ready to go for June, like, it makes sense that they weren't allowed to change it. But I also do agree that it doesn't make sense not to put, why didn't you put your best foot forward and show the better build? But at least they were honest, and people have come out and said, yes, there is a newer build. It's much better than this. And the game wasn't running on the Xbox. It was running on a similarly spec PC, which still, the fact that it was running 4K 60 with no issues is very promising, because it was very smooth. It was very buttery, but they're still working out some kinks. That's just being honest. They are. But I will say this. I do not think it's a wise idea to just bash this game because, oh, Microsoft, they can't do anything right. Oh, Sony just makes all the best games. Like, no. We're going to be honest. We're going to be objective, because this game looked great. It ran great. And I'm excited to see what the final product looks like, because I'm still buying the Series X when it comes out. I'm still buying Halo Infinite when it comes out. I'm going to buy it on my PC and I'm going to buy it on the Xbox. I'm going to buy both versions. And either way, I'm excited to see what happens, because I'm excited to see if they are able to live up to all the good, like, support that they have rebuilt with the Halo community after Halo 5, because Halo 5 was a mess. And then the Master Chief Collection was just like, when the Master Chief Collection first came out, it was terrible. And I'm speaking from experience, it was terrible. The idea was great. The execution was horrible when it came out. And now everyone loves the Master Chief Collection. The interest in Halo has drastically spiked up again because of how well they're handling, the Master Chief Collection, how much they've spent investing and fixing it. And now they're actually improving it. But aside from that, I'm interested to see what happens. And I hope you guys are too. I hope that you guys don't just jump on the Xbox hate bandwagon and just agree and say, yeah, this game is trash. The console is trash. PlayStation all the way. Like, wait till it comes out. Well, I'm saying the same thing even for the PS5. I'm very negative towards the PS5 because I'm worried about the heating and thermals about the damn thing. I'm worried that if it is true that all the games will run at 4K 30, because that's not very next gen. That doesn't scream bleeding edge. But we'll wait and see what happens. And that's just me. Everybody knows I have a personal preference towards Xbox. I prefer the Xbox console. I've had more Xboxes than I've had a PlayStation. But I will also say, I'm not going to bash the PS5. I'm going to wait to see what happens when it comes out. And same thing I'm going to tell you guys about the Xbox. Wait and see. Wait till it comes out. Wait till Halo Infinite comes out. And let's see. Just wait. But don't just hop on the bandwagon. But don't also be oblivious to what needs to be fixed. That's all I have to say about that. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It really means a lot to me. You guys keep coming back and listening to these episodes, that you guys constantly enjoy my opinion on these matters. And you guys obviously pick the topics because, well, you guys pick them and I talk about them. But I do want to thank you guys for all the love and support. It really means a lot to me. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you guys so much. Leave a like, dislike on the video, go in the comment section down below and let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about Halo Infinite? Are you excited? What disappointments did you have with it? How do you feel about like the grappling hook or the sprinting or the possible directions of the story it could go in? Also, I will say this. I'm very interested that they could actually be retconning a lot of stuff in Halo 5. But I'm actually excited that they might do that because Halo 5 was terrible. But I will say this. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. But I will say, for the YouTube people, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you guys will always be notified when these episodes go live. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to your podcast, thank you guys for giving me your time and coming back and listening. It really, really means a lot to me. If you guys want to become Patreon backers, this goes to all you guys on YouTube and all the audio listeners. You can just click on the link and become a Patreon backer and get early access to the episodes. But I do want to say thank you guys for everything. Thank you guys for continuing to be awesome, to continue to support me, to love me. It really, really means a lot to me. But I will see you guys next week. Thank you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Please continue to be safe. Please keep me in your thoughts and prayers because I am going back to school on Saturday. So please be with me. It's going to be crazy, guys. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be crazy. But I love you guys to death, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Please be safe. Please continue to take care of everyone around you, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.